Welcome back to the show. We're now going to look at the different ways we source different products from our forests. We all know there's plantations. We also know that there's beautiful native forest like this. The question is one better than the other?
Well, I'm here in a pine plantation, and it's not a matter of one being better than the other. It's the fact that each contributes something different to give us the timber industry we require.
For most people, a tree is a tree. Chop it down, saw it up, timber supply sorted. But in reality, it's a bit more complicated than that.
There are, I guess, three different types of forests that provide wood for the local forest and wood products industry. Hardwood plantations like this, softwood plantations, and also native forests. Each of these types of forests grow different types of trees, which are managed differently. And the wood has different properties and different applications. So they're all very important, but we actually need them all in different ways.
At the top of the value chain is the clean, clear hardwood sourced from native forests. Species like mountain and alpine ash naturally grown over long periods and carefully managed.
In Victoria, we've got about 7.8 million hectares of native forest. There's less than 10% of that area that's available for timber production, and we harvest around about, or less than 0.1% of that available area per year. However, it's still important for our own domestic supply and for our own timber needs.
Our native forests provide virtually all of Australia's hardwood products: furniture, flooring, appearance and structural grade timbers. Typical rotation times can stretch to more than 100 years, and it's this slow growing technique that makes the difference.
The longer we grow these trees, the bigger they get. So we can produce large sectional timber, which you can't get from smaller trees in plantations. But we're also growing them more slowly. So when these logs are sawn into timber products, they're more stable. They've got less growth stresses. So we're trying to grow them in a much more natural environment than perhaps an accelerated environment in a production plantation environment.
This is a blue gum plantation, almost 20 years old, and like all the eucalypt plantations that you might drive by, you'll notice the trees grow up nice and straight and strong. You rotate these every sort of 30 years. And
you might think, driving past, that why don't we use these to make furniture and houses out of? But these trees aren't good for that. They are planted, like 99% of all the hardwoods in Australian plantations, for their pulpwood value.
Paper and cardboard making is a process that requires lots of fibre, and for nice white copy paper, hardwood fibre is best. To feed Australia's appetite for paper, thousands of hectares of eucalypt plantations have sprung up. Success means high yields in short time.
They're grown with herbicides and to control weeds, and also fertilisers to promote growth. So what you're really trying to get is the maximum volume per hectare to maximise the fibre for paper making.
Because of their speedy growth, these trees will never make it as sawlogs, and until investors are prepared to wait longer for a return, sawlog plantations probably won't attract much interest. There have been long rotation trials with mixed results.
To date, there's been a lot of problems with those longer rotation plantations to actually saw them in the right way to get structural and appearance grade timbers.
Now, you can't discuss the plantation industry in Australia without visiting a place like this, Andrew, which is quite obviously a pine plantation.
It is indeed, Nick, and contained in this 27-year-old pine plantation is a huge range of different products.
Whether it's framing up a house or super soft tissue for wiping your bottom, the humble radiata pine has 1,000,001 uses. Your typical pine plantation will happily produce sawlogs, pulpwood, pine bark and more depending on its management.
The green triangle on the border between Victoria and South Australia produces most of Australia's softwood, but as is the case in each of the industry segments, we still don't produce enough to meet demand.
Wood's certainly the environmental choice. It's renewable, biodegradable. It stores carbon, and it's much more energy efficient to produce than a lot of alternative materials such as steel, concrete and aluminium. And we know that our forests in Victoria and indeed in Australia are sustainably managed, transparently and accountably, whereas some of the imports, we have seen there's a problem with potentially up to 10% of the wood that we import in Australia with suspected sources of illegal logging.
So it's not a simple case of native being better than plantation or vice versa, but the fact we need different forest types for different forest products.
Native forests are still king for high quality hardwood sawlog. Hardwood plantations, almost without exception, are being used in paper making. And pine plantations take care of some of our softwood needs, but Australia still imports $2 billion more forest products than it exports. Next up on Going Bush, we look at one of Australia's longest running water monitoring programs and its influence on modern forest management.